I think whenever you're reminiscing about a place, it's the things that go wrong, actually, that you remember, or the funny things. And there were quite a lot of amusing things that happened then. They probably weren't that amusing at the time, but thinking about them, they are. But the first memory I have isn't amusing at all. In fact, it's the exact opposite. There was a young woman called Dorothy Mills who worked in the Borough Surveyor's office. She was only about 17, and she was murdered. She had her head stoved in at the back of the Nalgo tennis court, so the back of Highfields building. And there were posters all round the borough. Have you seen Dorothy? Did you see sort of Dorothy? And nobody's ever been arrested to this day. But the CID were all over the place, as you can imagine. So anyway, that's the awful bit, really. And but generally speaking, one of my first memories when I just started, my boss, who was the head of the Central Records, was a chap called Horace Dunn. He'd be long dead now. And he was a smashing chap, but he was bloody useless. It really was. People were tolerated in those days. I mean, they still are, local government, And the first thing he told me, he said, we have to get things right in this department, Bill. And he took a piece of paper and he put it in a punch and banged it like that. He says, the bit outside has to be equidistant at the front of the punch and the back of the punch. That was my instruction, how to punch a piece of paper.
I somehow fluked sufficient O-levels to get a job at the Town Hall, and I started work at the Town Hall in September 1963. Just a lad out of school, petrified of such a large building, really, and luckily there were three of us who started work the same day, and we were allocated. We were in the Borough Treasurer's Department, which is now that you'd call the Finance Department, or what they give themselves fancy titles now, but it was the Borough Treasurer's Department, and one of my colleagues was sent to audit. One of my colleagues was sent to motor tax. In those days, the council collected motor tax as well as part of their job, and I was allocated a spot in the rates office, which we now know are called council tax, of course, but it was very much the rates office in those days. And there I was, large staff, 20, 30 people. I sat at the little junior's desk in the front and really did all the dispatching of the letters and taking the post round twice a day. And the director of finance at that time was Mr. Evans, W.C. Evans. And my main job he had his own office just by my desk almost, and he was a very heavy smoker, as a lot of people were, of course, in 1963. And my main job for him was to collect his cigarettes from a shop over the road, which is gone now, but it was not far. And I had to get 40 gold leaf cigarettes in the morning, 40 gold leaf cigarettes in the afternoon. And I think he'd smoked a lot by the time it was time to go home. So that was my main job there. And I remember him saying that he was always in meetings, of course, with other senior members of the council. And he said, don't bother about knocking, or even if I'm in a meeting, still come in, because he obviously made sure that he wanted his cigarettes. So that's one of my very early moments of rubbing shoulders against what was a senior member of staff. I stayed here for 4 years, 1966, 67. I had, in those days, you had to move jobs, really, if you were in the council to get a bit better off. You'd never get sacked, but you'd never get promoted. If you stayed here for 40 years, then you may move up. You see, whether you were any good or not didn't seem to matter. But
because we were the dispatch department as well, we used to send all the council agendas out, all sorts of sort of stuff used to come to us. So we decided to buy in bulk the envelopes. We had these big sort of manila envelopes. And we thought, well, let's push the boat out, we'll go for 10,000. When Howard rented the order, put an extra note on. So one day, a lorry turned up at the town hall, and this guy, all apologies, says, well, this is all we've got, he says, because we've run out of paper from the mill. We've never had an order like this before. They're still using it, probably.
I had two real abiding memories at the West Bromwich Town Hall. One is when West Brom won the cup in '68, and they came home. They bought the cup home. I couldn't get tickets for Wembley, but they bought the cup home the following day, and I was in the crowd outside when they paraded outside the town hall in 1968. So that's certainly one abiding memory. It was absolutely rammed. Another one is before I joined the cycling club, I was in the Cubs and then the Scouts. And I was in the scout band, so West Bromwich had a town scout band, for want of a better phrase. I used to play the bugle. I probably drove my neighbours nuts when I was practising because I wasn't that particularly good at it, I'm sure. But yeah, and so occasionally we would play at the town hall. Played on the town hall stage. And at other times on, Remembrance Sunday or St George's Day, there would be a parade. They don't seem to happen so much now because of health and safety and all that sort of stuff, and having to close roads, not so much closed roads, but I don't know. There's lots of reasons why it doesn't happen, which I probably won't bore you with. But yeah, we sort of parade around in various places and play in the scout band. So, but yes, certainly playing on the stage at the town hall was one of them.
I don't know whether it still exists, but there was a huge basement under here. We used to call it the Tombs. And there was a guy, I think Harry, his name was, the carpenter, and he worked in the public works department, which was about half a mile away. There was a big carpenter's job on the stage, and so Harry came over, but he never went back to the works department. He actually set up shop in one of the rooms in the basement, with kettles in there, and radios, everything, and a little grill. And but he never went back. I mean, nobody asked any questions. He still got his wages, and he just sort of changed his office because he felt like he was more comfortable there. But there was another room where there was a police amnesty for people with firearms and other offensive weapons. This was in the probably the late 50s. And whether the police hadn't got any accommodation or secure accommodation at the station, they all came down here. And they may still be there. And I mean, there were incredible things. There was Lugers, there was Mausers, there was sword sticks, Derringers, absolutely everything, I had hours of fun playing all this. Security wasn't very tight in those days.
After a while, I think they trusted me and so on, because there's lots of money, of course. Most people paid cash to pay the bills. There were a few cheques, but no cards and no bank transfers. None of that had been invented, so invariably the people paid the rates and the rent were paid by cash. And every day we had to take the cash, couldn't leave it there, over the road, Lodge Road, to the Midland Bank, which is on the corner. I've noticed it's still there now, HSBC now, of course, but it was the Midland Bank in those days. And that was my job. I thought nothing of it. It was in a wooden briefcase type thing. It was all cash. There'd probably be, I don't know, £2,000, £1,500, that sort of money, in cash, in this box. There was a key that locked it, held in my office, so it was locked when it came to me. And the girls in the Midland Bank had got another key to open it. And I had to just walk across Lodge Road 2-3 seconds into there every day at 2:10 in the afternoon, just after lunch. And I did that, and that was fine. Many years later, in the days of, you know, security and stuff, I trembled to think what a little lad with a wooden, same time, same place, that little door just on the corner is blocked up now, I believe. That was my over there, and nobody with me, no security, no health and safety, nothing at all. And nothing ever happened, of course, but as I say, looking back, I shudder to think what would have happened if, because it was so predictable, you see. They'd know a little lad, little weedy lad, has got a box full of cash at 2:10 every lunchtime.
Yeah, I must mention this. This was at the Queslett Road. There was a widening scheme, and I think Queslett Road was, it was in West Bromwich then. And part of the accommodation works was to put a ramp, because they'd lowered the level of the path by the road. So that meant there had to be a ramp for a lot of properties to enable vehicular access from the houses. This one chap, I think it must have been in the evening, the foreman says, "Look, you're okay now. With the concrete set. You know, you can use the ramp." Well, it wasn't set, so he drove down. And he just sank, and he actually set. But there's lots of things like that, really, I suppose. It's always the things that go wrong that really stick in your memory. There are lots of things that went right. That's just your job.
My wife-to-be also worked in the town clerk's department. Little did I know at the time, of course. In 1963, we had what we'd call a photocopying machine, which was unheard of. It was like, you know, science fiction almost, but we had one, and that served the whole council. That's every department and other buildings, of course, and that was kept in the town clerk's typing section, as they call typing. If you said typing now, most people probably wouldn't know, but that was the old-fashioned sort of typing. And one of my jobs doing the post and taking all the stuff round was going in there. And I used to dread it because I was a little lad, barely out of short trousers. All I knew was the Albion or train spotting, and suddenly I had to go in there. Senior colleagues of mine sent me to keep getting copies of documents and so on. And of course that was again my job to do that. But I used to dread going in there. I used to dread it because I'd go through, and of course all the ladies, they were attractive ladies, they'd be, I don't know, 20, 25, but really grown. I'm used to sort of school kids, really grown up ladies. And I felt they were looking, this poor little lad trembling came through the door, and they all stopped and I did. And anyway, my wife-to-be, funnily enough, was one of those people who were laughing at me, of course. We spent many years laughing about that. So that's another memory that we have laughed about, and I tremble, and whenever I was asked to get cigarettes, take this to so-and-so, collect that from so-and-so, take that to so-and-so. I didn't mind that, but I always used to say, please, please, please don't anybody tell me to go and get a photocopy, because I knew I'd have to go through the agony of going through the door and all the lovely ladies looking at me.
Well, my father worked for the corporation, which was the to the council. And the one year they had a Christmas party for all the children of all the employees of the corporation in the town hall. After all the jelly and ice cream and whatever, Santa came, greeted by various whoops and cheers and whatever. And the children would traipse on stage and collect a present from Santa. And when it became my turn to go to see Santa, I realised that Santa was my father. Now, he hadn't told me this, and to my shock, I realised it was my father. And he just said, you know, I had to sit on his knee and do all that malarkey. And after I went away, he came and told me that the guy who was doing it originally had been taken ill or something. So he'd been drafted in to be Santa. But it was quite a shock to go up there and find that your father is Father Christmas.
Because I was brought up in a church, the Baptist church that I've mentioned, we were part of the Sunday Schools Union and therefore part of the West Bromwich Sunday Schools Festival. And we had a yearly Sunday Schools Festival where all the Sunday schools got together and presented, I don't know, sometimes it would be drama, we'd do plays perhaps, or we'd do readings, poetry readings, and singing, and there'd be a choir, massed choir of the Sunday schools, etc. A sort of showcase of what the Sunday schools had been doing, partly for church members and partly for people whose children attended the Sunday schools. And I remember the first time I remember this really when I was about 7, and I was entered into the competition for singing as a soloist, as a boy soprano, which I won, much to my surprise, and I was very surprised that I'd won it. And I remember it well, partly because it was the first time I'd stood in front of so many people in the town hall and was a little bit nervous, but also because my father, who was very proud of me for having won it, asked me what I wanted, and I said a box of after eights, which doesn't sound much now, but they were very modern, very sophisticated when I was 7 or 8 years old. And that's one of my earliest memories and one of my memories at the town hall. And the last memory I have of the Sunday Schools Festival was when I was 18, and that was the last time I entered as a soloist. And I won that again. And again, it was still pretty intimidating as an 18-year-old to stand up in front of so many people and sing on your own. So I remember that well. I was quite proud of that, I suppose.
My earliest memory of West Bromwich Town Hall was when I was in a school orchestra when I was about 14 or 15, and we had a concert in the main hall. And the reason I remember it was the first school concert I'd done where my grandmother came. And my grandmother never came to any of my concerts because, you know, she didn't think she'd like it, or I don't know, whatever. But I was really, really proud. And she'd never heard me play before. She knew I played, obviously, but she'd never heard me play. And I always remember that because obviously she's not with me now. But I always remember that. I mean, this was going back to like the early 80s, so the town hall has changed a lot since then as far as decor, because I've had the beautiful ceiling redone and everything. When I started with the TPO and realised it was here, I thought, you know, you never move far away from your roots, dear. And I thought it is nice to be playing here again, because when I'm sitting up there, when I'm rehearsing, sometimes I look down at the empty chairs and I can still see her. Sorry. I can still see her sitting there, and it's nice. Sorry. Sorry. It's a nice memory, and like I said before, I don't believe in coincidences. It's fate, and something dragged me back here so I could remember that and remember her. And it's such a beautiful building. It's architecture, and it's spacious, and the acoustics. It's such a beautiful building, and it's a real privilege to be able to play here. And people should come here more often, because if you don't come to places like this, they're going to get closed down. And it's so sad, because it's such a beautiful place to look at, and it's a beautiful place to be in, and it's got this his atmosphere of grandeur, and it's really, really beautiful, and it should be made more. You should definitely come to, because it would be awful to lose it. It would be awful.